Greetings and salutations. Today, we have Brandon Sibley. We're doing fundamental principles of freedom today. So I hope you enjoyed. He couldn't stay too long. He had some personal issue to get to, but long enough to get a lot of things laid down and a great first episode for our instructional series. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, here's Brandon. Well, hello, Brandon. What's
Well,
happening?
well, hello, Gary. Glad to be here today to
Welcome
discuss.
back to the Legal Beagle podcast. As if you need to be welcomed.
Well, and I hope people take this fundamental lesson that we're going to juxtapose upon our current reality and grasp why it is necessary. And I'll articulate that real quickly. We are living in such a time, such as William Casey, the ex CIA director, envisioned, and where that Americans will be so misinformed that they will not know which way to turn to for the basis of their reality. And that's not a direct quote, but people can go find that. That's William Casey, the ex CIA director. And what I find over and over again is people, and I'll just give a quick allegory or metaphor or something happening today in reality. Today, the House passed the TikTok bill. However, on the front, it looks great, right? We're talking about communism and everything else. But what you're going to find is there's never a bipartisan effort in Congress. You can't have a Congress and government this bad that is going to pass any bill that's good for us. And the reason for that is you must look past the outer layer presented to you and look on the inside to the facts. And don't believe reality as it's presented to you, Gary.
I never do. Anymore.
So with that, Gary and I have been discussing a few different avenues that we wanted to start off the Legal Beagle channel. And originally we had wanted to do a little a series that we're going to lay out different topics. Well, there's absolutely no point in doing that without everybody that joins the channel and starts our journey. They must have a base foundation knowledge of what we're discussing. And so with that, I spoke a little bit about it with the episode with Alphonse. Here we're gonna go into a little bit more of a deeper dive into the idea of individualism versus collectivism. But I want to start right here by stating unequivocally, with my extensive study through most philosophies and history, I will tell you right now, Marxism, socialism, Nietzscheism, these are not radical ideas. Okay. All these have been played out time and time again. The radical idea is America and the idea of individualism. Okay. And so with that, you can interject anytime you want, Gary, and we'll start bringing in empirical evidence that Gary and I have lived through with firsthand evidence and what we see in the courts and why we see it in the courts and why it is imperative for you to not get disheartened. Just realize where you are in the time period. Right now, we are in a time of great delusion. The Band-Aid's slowly getting peeled off. The veil is lifting, and people are recognizing there's something wrong. But the machine is already in place to destroy the radical idea of Western ideology.
Right. And getting back to what you were saying about the radical idea is America, then real quick, I said it briefly on the live stream, but I don't know how many people caught it. In Europe, you know, the Nazis are on the right, and the socialists and the Marxists are on the left. Well, that doesn't work in America because the far right in America is what?
Is anarcho-capitalism.
Anarchy, right? Without any government.
Well, and what we want is right there on the borderline of it. And America still has never had it, by the way. Brief period of time in the early 1900s, we were as close as we could be. to true free market capitalism. And it's right there on the verge. It's the true right in America is a limited government. And people on the left and right cry and moan about capitalism's greed. But if you really study, if you really dive into the railroads, the Rockefellers, Ma Bell, and all these other corporations, Amazon and Walmarts, and everything that operates today, you'll find that the government, when the government gets involved, is when the monopoly is built.
That's right. Because only government can use force to encourage certain products.
That's right. That's right. So, can you put the screen up? Is the screen up for everybody when I share the screen?
It's up. It's ready to go.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, let's start off with a couple ideas, and then we'll travel through time as we go through this, and we'll use our current base of knowledge to logically deduce what is factual and what is a false reality. All right, so first we have to define what individualism is. So if you read your Declaration of Independence, you'll find all your grievances about King George and all these other things. And then you'll start seeing words like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But however, most people cannot articulate what these things mean, right? It's just the right. And you'll hear people say constitutional rights and things but the truth is that they're secured rights of the individual, where government, for the first time that I know of in history, and if there's ever another time and somebody can send it to me, government and the state, or the mystical, the Pope or the Caesar, was lowered down below that of the individual. So we must define individualism first, and we must define life, liberty, and property. So in our Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Okay, you see the capitalization of the word right there. So that is a personification. As we move through this study, we're going to discuss grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and their importance in our society, and to have a civil society where we can have open debate and discuss ideas. However, one of the worst atrocities that has happened in America is the control of the public education system, where something as simple as this, where we have personified an idea, which means we have given it the attribute of man. Okay, that's what a personification is. So when you see even in the Bible, people don't even know this about words in the Bible. When it's capitalized, we've given that an attribute of man, and we've personified it. Okay, so self-evident truths that man is a being of faculty. And what does that mean? That we can perceive things outside our natural realm and think of things in a complex structure. And what do I mean by that? The beast of the field has two ideas only, most of the time. Some of them do play, but nonetheless, it's procreation and eating. Okay, man can think outside and act outside that. We can actually build, we can actually create, we can actually mimic nature. Okay, because we have that higher consciousness. Okay, so man is above nature. So the life is very simple. The right to life is the right to support your own life by your own work. Okay. Your right to liberty is the freedom to choose how to support your life. And this is a key aspect right here, without physical compulsion or coercion. And that is a fundamental flaw in everything that we have witnessed the last 4 years, including COVID. So I particularly took this next quote from John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about property and what property is. Well, you cannot own in our society. You cannot own another individual, and this is where parents who are in custody battles and things of that nature commit a a faux pas by stating that their children are their property. Well, you can't own another individual. You have a parent and guardian relationship with them. Okay. However, there's no greater property protection for you than this right here. And I'm going to read from, now this is, I do want to state this now too, primary source documents. So the Second Treatise of Government, John Locke, is considered a primary source document. Why is this important? Because most of the founders read John Locke, and Lockean theory is the basis of the constitutional republic for which we live in. So if you have not read John Locke's works, I would advise you to do it. Another individual to read is William Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England. These are huge resources, the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. These are huge resources for you to further your understanding of how it's supposed to be versus how it is. And that's what that's the point of this study anyway. So property from John Locke, John Locke's Second Treatise. Though the earth and all inferior creatures be common to all men. So you'll notice there that he said inferior. Okay, remember, man is above nature. Yet every man has a property in his own person. So what the legal, I'll just go to William Blackstone's commentaries there. You have the artificial person, and then you have the natural person. Okay, this no body, I'm going to state that again. This no body, B-O-D-Y, capitalized, personification of an idea, has any right to but himself. The labor of his body and the work of his hands, we may say, are properly his. Whatsoever then he removes out of the state that nature hath provided and left it in, he hath mixed his labor with and joined to it something that is his own, and thereby makes it his property. So if we take that idea and we go through the Declaration of Independence, where we left King George in the property taxes, income taxes, and things of that nature, and we move forward through time to where we are now, there's a reason why the administrative state was created, that you're always operating in commerce, and interstate commerce has been continually expanded by the judicial branch to encompass all aspects of life. Okay, because property is exclusive to you, and without property rights, you don't have any right to the other two. Okay, you have no way to which to corner yourself away from society and not be a part of society or be a part of society. It doesn't matter. But government can come in, or anointed class of individuals can come in and physically compel you by force to submit to their will, the will of the general. We'll go through that in just a second.
And we're seeing that with the Amish, Amos Miller, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, and we're seeing it all over the place, right? There's no greater how do I say this? Because I'm writing out Brandy's appeal right now, and I'll talk about this real quick. So the reason why I go through these studies with everybody is because I want you to be able to write a primary source document that you can articulate the facts of how the law is supposed to be. Okay. Not about the great fiction that is the United States government, an abstract idea. And we have to be able to abstract when we're talking generally, folks. But here's the truth. The state doesn't exist. It's just a fiction, okay? Just like LCMC health does not exist in nature. It exists on paper. And these ideas are true, but it's an abstraction. It's an amalgamation of a group of people that wanted to come together for business profit. No problem with that. It's an artificial person, okay? However, it's only me and you here. And the second that Dr. John Heaton and Greg Fern directed employees of their corporation to mandate that a healthcare worker, which is an abstraction also, by the way, because healthcare workers don't exist. There's only individuals. Well, whenever they directed my daughter to shoot herself with a shot. Well, what they did was show controlling interest or ownership in her property, her direct property, no one else's. Well, that's a criminal act, folks. At the moment that they said they were going to physically compel, extort, or coerce her, guess what it was? It was a violation of moral law. We'll get into that in a minute. It's a violation of our individualistic system of law. So we're going to go to the collectivist idea, collectivism in all its forms. It doesn't matter if it's Nietzscheism. It doesn't matter if it's Hegelian, Marxist, postmodernism, whether it's Popeism, whether it's Caesarism. It's a special anointed class, a proletariat of the vanguard, or any other amalgamation of it. So the time we're living in right now, we have a new collectivist identity presenting itself in our society, and it's called experts.
I love a good expert.
Well, this special class of individuals, that's who we turn to, right? And we've been programmed and indoctrinated subliminally and right out in the open to accept the lab coat guy that puts on his shirt, the guy in the suit and the tie, and we commit logical fallacies by the appeal to authority. Well, the expert said it, okay? As if the expert can't be challenged. And now we're moving into a time period where we have scientific consensus, right? And things of that nature. So let's go to collectivism. We have the two branches that I'm going to identify today. The mystical, which is the philosophy of collectivism, upholds the existence of a mystic, an unperceivable social organism, while denying the reality of perceived individuals. A view which implies that man's senses are not a valid instrument for perceiving reality. Okay, then we'll move into the social. Marx emphasized collective interest, economic equality, and public ownership as proponents of collectivism. From Marxist ideas of collectivism, branched out other theories of socialism in the 19th century. Socialist theories all emphasize that things should be regulated and controlled by the collective. Okay? So now we'll go into their ideas about life, liberty, and property. Okay? Rousseau, the requirements of the general will, and you'll notice I picked three different philosophers. I could have picked a 20 to 30 of them. We could have picked Kant, Immanuel Kant, who's another of the illogical and unreasonable philosophers of the 17th century. We could have done Heidegger. We could have done Michel Foucault, Jacques Derrida, Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno. I could have found the same quotes over and over again from all of them. Okay, that's a key point that people need to grasp and understand. It is not as complicated as people make it out to be, because what you have done, what they've done is fractionalized all the different ideas as like they're different. But no, when you get down to the fundamental and the basics, they're all the same. Okay, so that's why I've got three quotes from three different people here to show you that the collectivist status, socialist mindset is a mind virus. Okay, it really is. It's a mind virus. It wishes to go back to pre-modernity.
The next pandemic.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the first pandemic.
Yeah. And that's what they want to do. They want to go back to pre-modernity. So Rousseau, the requirements of the general will. Remember, this is an abstraction. Nobody can quantify this. Who's the general will? What is it? Well, he's going to tell us what it is because he knows all, right? So there's not much separation from the mystical and the social. Because it's still a religious exercise. And how no one in the United States has yet challenged secular humanism, Marxism, or all the others as a combination of church and state, I don't know, because it should be. It is a combination of church and state. But nonetheless, the requirements of the general will absolutely override all other considerations. So a citizen should render to the state all the services he can as soon as the sovereign demands them. Well, here's the crazy thing about sovereign. Sovereign, in order to be sovereign, you must have life. Okay. And in this general will entity, this abstract idea of the state is the sovereign's will. But guess what? There's always has to be controlling it. A man. So we've raised one class of man above the rest of class of man, and yet they'll sit here and do this dialectical reasoning that the Ubermensch or whatever will come save us all. And it's no different than the messianic complex of Judaism, where the third temple's coming back, and Christianity also, where the return of Christ and everything's going to be great. It's this program, hero programming is prevalent in all these ideologies. So Hegel, we'll go to liberty. Hegel, Charles Hegel, Hegelian dialectics. But though we tolerate the idea that individuals, their desires and the gratification of them are thus sacrificed, and their happiness given up to the empire chance to which it belongs, and that as a general rule, individuals come under the category of means to an ulterior end. So that the ends justify the means. Okay. You'll hear this in when you start searching into Jesuits and Judaism and Marxism, Hegelian dialectics. It doesn't matter which epoch you go back to. If you read chapter 8 of Plato's Republic, you will find the same language in there. I did use Plato's allegory of the cave because it is, for my interpretation, it was great. But listen to me. As far as philosophy, Plato's probably the worst of Greece. Aristotle is who I would base my love on, and that would be the Nicomachean ethics. However, Plato, if you haven't read Plato's chapter 8 of the Republic, I advise everyone to do so, because you will see democracy playing out just as Plato envisioned it. And this is why they continue to state mud democracy, because democracy is incompatible with individualism. Again, we're talking about the general will of the state, the 51 control the other 49. It is a collectivist ideology also.
So for those that don't understand what Plato's Cave is, you want to have a brief synopsis?
Well, yeah. So Plato's Caves, you come into this world first off in limited darkness. You have no way first off, we're dependent on other people telling us what things are. Okay. And we always think that's true until you start questioning life. So the cave is, you're sitting there shackled and chained, and you're looking at the symbols on the wall. There's other people using the shadow that portrays on that wall, and you have no clue that the puppet masters are there, right? You believe the images to be true. However, the first man to get out, he climbs on up the ladder, right, the stairway to heaven, towards knowledge, towards light. He's been in the dark cave, and he climbs up towards the light. And his first glimpse of that light scares him. And so it is at this point in time where the path to knowledge and wisdom, most people revert back to the safety and comfort of the cave. And we'll talk about this because individualism requires a certain independence from the collective. And it requires a tough spirit, a sound mind, and a sound body. And I'll compare that to COVID. Because I think I can make a great allegory here. During COVID and throughout its entirety, the test was to see how tame and docile and domesticated humans were. Okay. When they could knowingly and willingly tell the populace that masks don't work, that social distancing don't work, and then come back and tell a lie on top of it, and the majority of society followed it anyway, showed just how far the programming and indoctrination had held. 90% of the society, that means the entire world, was under direct control and authority of someone else. And for this instance, it's going to be the experts, right? Or their savior, Trump, or whoever, whatever. They didn't have direct control of their faculties. And this is the unconscious and intelligent manipulation that Edward Bernays spoke about. But nonetheless, they had reached a pinnacle with their ability to bypass the cognitive functions and the faculties of man and insert an idea that even the people knew, because the factual evidence was right in front of their face. They rejected reality and accepted unreality. And I'll prove a point with that with objective facts. Everyone that bought a mask bought a mask. It was on a box that says this cannot protect you against COVID-19. Okay, just ignored the language. Anybody who knows anything walking around with a mask on your face wasn't going to save you. But that wasn't the case. That wasn't.
So you brought up Edward Bernays, and I wanted to tell everybody that he was the double nephew of Sigmund Freud.
He was.
And he was the counterpart to Goebbels from Germany. And he wrote a book called Propaganda. I highly recommend everyone pick that book up.
Yeah, so and that's a great point, Gary, about Sigmund Freud, because the entire realm of psychology and psychiatry is a pseudoscience, and its entire basis, if you've ever read any Freud, you can go back and see that this was another sexual deviant pervert also. And what you'll find in most times in most of these individuals, that either they're lazy, they're sexual deviants, or they're cluster B type personalities, which means narcissistic and sociopathic. You'll find it over and over again.
You gotta love the narcissism.
Yeah, you'll find it over and over again. Michel Foucault, one of the leading writers of the 1970s, which most of your modern education's built off of and things of that nature, was the first guy, the first guy who openly tried to advocate for pedestry, which is the National Man Boys Love Association. Jacques Derrida. And what you'll find is that through their disdain of individualism, that what they're truly saying is that their will, these intellectuals' will, and their sexual desires and things of that nature are more important than the individual. And so they're willing to violate the life, liberty, and property of another, and they want state-sanctioned ability. And folks, don't take it from me. Look at your reality right now. Our medical industry actually is committing medical tyranny against children. Okay, COVID-19. We can go on and on, but just take in reality, accept it, and understand what our fight against. And you can typically, most people go good versus evil. We need to be able to articulate what exactly it is. We can't just go it's evil versus good, because it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So they've been able to get into the soft matter of every woman, child in America. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, these 9-year-old kids and 8-year-old kids being raised by cluster B personalities, which is Munchausen by proxy, is exactly what it is. What these mothers and fathers are doing to their children, they're psychologically damaged, and they're passing their sickness on to their children. These kids aren't evil. They may eventually become that way, but we can't look at it like that all these people are evil. A lot of these people are
Take a moment and tell us what cluster B is.
So a cluster B personality is the type of personality that usually has no empathy towards mankind or nature. Okay, and this is going to get into your sociopathic, psychopathic, and narcissistic mindsets. And you'll find this out. This is big in victim consciousness and guilt consciousness, and you can find this in many religions and many ideologies. By the way, one of them is one of the big ones is actually Judaism. They take these children from birth and they Holocaust them to death. Well, guess what happens with that child as they grow up? The world's the enemy and everybody is against us. Well, when you do that, guess what happens? And we're seeing it play out with this racial restorative justice right now, where black people have been pounded so much that white people are the oppressors, that now they're acting out against white people, and the crime rates are going up instead of down, because you can't treat people in groups. You can only treat people individually. And so when you have your group quotas and you have your group your collective identities, what you're doing is actually doing what is called forced equity, and the only way to do that is to raise people above each other, right? And then you do the dialectical. It keeps swinging.
So you're saying that one shoe doesn't fit all?
That's right. It doesn't. It doesn't. So we'll go into property. On this collectivist doctrine, Marx, the period of transition to socialism brings property ownership and its consequences, such as the exploitation of labor and alienation, to creating a new socioeconomic structure, allowing individuals to explore their authentic identity. Thus, man can quit becoming an object and become a subject, the real man absorbing the abstract citizen, and only then human emancipation will be completed. Marx 2000, 1843, chapter 64. And you see this inversion of reality, right? Where man must become the subject instead of the object. And of course, if anybody has ever read anything about Marx's personal life, he was a complete indigent idiot. Plain and simple. While he could articulate grand ideas, all you can see the illogical reasoning right here in his quote. But he was for the abolition of all private property, as if, and here's the illogical nature of this, if the collective owns all the property, then there's one group, one entity, one man at the top that can actually direct everybody to the use of the property. So again, it's illogical, unreasonable. And there we go again. We're back to Caesar. We're back to Pharaoh. We're back to this collectivist ideology. And again, there's no freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, freedom of life, liberty, and property. So let's go to the next slide. It's going to be the last PowerPoint slide for today. We must understand that rights are a moral precept, a moral principle. Let's say that. This is why Christianity is the first and foremost religion in Western ideology, because it was based on not an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, but it was based on the Golden Rule. And the Golden Rule is explained as such very succinctly by John Locke. The state of nature has a law of nature to govern it, which obliges everyone, and reason, which is that law, teaches all mankind. Who will but consult it? That being all equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, his health, his liberty, or his possessions. And when his own preservation comes not in competition, ought he, as much as he can, to preserve the rest of mankind, and may not, unless it be to do justice on an offender, take away or impair the life, or what tends to the preservation of the life, the liberty, the health, the limb, or goods of another. So you're reading Christ's principles in that particular writing, folks. There's a reason why there's an all-out assault on Christianity, and it's not just because Christianity, mostly the institutionalized and organized parts of it, they have given up the principles of Christ already. Okay. But the all-out assault on Christianity is because it's also a moral book on how we act in society. Okay, well, you can't have morality inside a collectivist identity, because remember, there are no facts; there's only perceptions. So for the pedophiles like Michel Foucault or Paulo Freire and things of that nature, they're not hurting anybody; they just love somebody. That's the mindset. Again, cluster B personalities. I'm going to tell you, it's over and over again. Objectivity. So rights are a moral precept. It also guides our actions, right, in conjunction with one another. Okay? That's the key part right there. Because as long as I'm not harmed in my life, liberty, or property, I have no right to go harm another. However, from the moment of criminal activity where somebody inhibits my life, liberty, or property, guess what I get to do? I get to defend my life, liberty, or property. Okay, so objectivity, to exist is to be something. So this is the key part right here in all of the naysayers of individualism. This is from Ayn Rand. And I speak of Ayn Rand. I love a lot of her stuff. I don't agree with everything.
That's
However, this
Ayn
particular
Rand.
Ayn Rand.
Just so,
So
everybody understands what we're talking about. Yeah.
So this particular point right here is in direct confrontation with Kant, with Heidegger, and many of the counter Enlightenment thinkers who had reached the proposition that reason couldn't explain everything, right? And therefore they started going back to the socialist mindset. And the reason for that is because reason cannot articulate a reason for life, because it can't be done. Okay, there's absolutely no factual proof of how everything works, right? We know I am that I am. I, consciousness, am aware. Okay, that's going to be the furtherance. How doth the thing say to the thing that made it, how doth thou make thee? Right? And so it's pretty simple. It's simple for a simple person, right? We don't have to overthink that. There's going to be things. We came into existence from no thing, right? Nobody. That's the beauty of John Locke too.
And there's many things in this world that we don't understand, but we realize it is.
That's right. That's right. That's the beauty of Miss Rand here. To exist is to be something. Okay, so we can't deny the objectivity. We are here. We can see. We can taste, touch, feel, and all these things, right? To possess a specific, peculiar, let's use the biblical word, a peculiar identity. Okay? This is the law of identity. A is A. Gary is Gary. Brandon is Brandon. You are you. So at that very foundational truth, I can pontificate that you have just as much rights as I do to exist. That's it. It's just that simple. Okay. Facts are facts, independent of any consciousness. No amount of passionate wishing, desperate longing, or hopeful pleading can alter the facts. Another great one is Facts Are Stubborn Things by John Adams, right? No matter your passions, your wishes, your whims, your dictates, they cannot change the facts. And of course, if you read Miss Rand's writings, you will find that she pulls from the founding fathers. She pulls from John Locke. She pulls from Rene Descartes. Rene Descartes is one of my favorites too, because I think, therefore I am. You've seen that in many of my writings. Okay, this is a non-material fact thing that's going on at all times. Your narrator going on, and that there is knowledge that can be obtained without the physical realm. We'll go in that in a different study. However, today when we're talking about the law, we're going to be in objective reality. Nor will ignoring or evading the facts erase them. The facts remain. They are immutable. So we must understand rights are a moral concept. The concept that provides a logical transition from the principles guiding an individual's actions to the principles guiding his relationship with others. The concept that preserves and protects individual morality in a social context. The link between the moral code of a man, this is a key part right here, and the legal code of a society. Between ethics and politics. Individual rights are the means of subordinating society to moral law. And you cannot separate politics and ethics, by the way, folks.
Well,
you can't do it.
People in Washington may disagree.
Well, they're unethical, right?
Sure.
They're unethical, and they're collectivists in nature. So, in their Paul says it greatly in the Bible. When I thought I would do good, I did not. And when I did not, he articulates this idea of false philanthropy and altruistic collectivism. And that's what Paul's speaking on. In a lot of these people's minds, that's why you can't just say they're evil. A lot of these minds, they truly believe that what they are doing is for the overall good. The one thing that they forgot is the nature of man.
And that's the danger in it.
That's right.
And they give them the will to continue and the will to overcome the adversity when resistance is shown, because they think they're doing good.
That's right. And that's the dangers about religious zealotry, right? Because this is a religion, folks. What we're up against is religious ideologies and zealotry, and this is why the women are out there when Roe v. Wade gets struck down and they're screaming in the streets and things of that nature. It hurts because they don't know anything else. Okay, so we'll go to the second part of the Declaration of Independence. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So a lot of people will tell me all the time that, Brandon, you just don't get it. There is no way that government's a necessary evil. It is for individualism. It is. There's no other way to protect the rights of the individual and subvert government power to the will of the people without the ability to go in and physically compel people to stop violating the rights of the individual.
and this is provided that government isn't violating the rights of the individual.
Well, and that's the reason why Ben Franklin said what he said. We gave you a constitutional republic if you can keep it, because the annals of history have shown over and over again man's willingness to go back to slavery. It's if you're a student of history, such as I am, and such as many of you, I'm sure, are, you will see the overall propensity for men to willingly walk back into slavery. This is this is the fear. It's the fear of independence, right? It is the fear of independence. It really is. When you boil everything down to a single cause, most people are completely afraid to be alone on that island. And that's why in the spiritual studies, we teach you how to go alone in your own mind, because there's no greater place to be than in the silence.
And if you can, self-reliance is a very scary thing if you've never done it before, for sure.
That's right. That's right. And that's why you're taught to be dependent, right? But nonetheless, and here again, that's why the fracturing of the nuclear family and things of that nature were done too, because now we send grandma and grandpa or mom and dad off to an old folks' homes, and it's not the responsibility of everybody here. And then, of course, now they got their Social Security. No, that's just theft too. That's another property theft too, because we're going to take from somebody else and give it to someone else. That's socialism defined, and it doesn't matter whether it's income tax, property tax.
But they paid into it all their lives, Randall.
I know. So what? You're gonna have to rip that Band-Aid off someday. And here's the thing: I actually calculated the other day on Twitter or X, whatever, the life savings of somebody if they didn't pay Social Security, Medicaid, and property tax, okay, or income tax. I just did it at an average of $50,000 a year. Okay, so some people would be. You're talking about $1 million over your lifetime. Well, I think most people with $1 million in their pocket at the age of 65, they're going to be able to retire, or they own so much stuff. If he wants to work, they do it. But you can't do that right now because we don't have free market capitalism, and the government has its hand in every basket. So the only power that our limited form of government, our constitutional republic, should have is deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, what ends? The right of the individual.
It's a fact.
It's just that simple. So we read these things, but we don't understand. We don't understand them, and that's the reason for this little lecture here or study. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. And so I put this in here for a reason, because this is where we're at. I don't want to flim-flam anybody or sugarcoat anything, but this is where we're at. Either we will reinstitute the republic Or we go back into physically compelled and coerced slavery, which is the collectivist mindset, which has ruled man for 6 millennia. Okay, that's it. That's all we have in front of us. Either we give up, roll over, and stick our heads in the sand and say it's not worth saving, or we institute a new form. That's not happening right now. There's not enough to do that. So we must stick our feet to the ground and stand righteously in indignation towards this collectivist ideology that is illogical, unreasonable, and irrational.
Right, because
Okay.
the people haven't come together enough and can't agree yet because they don't
No,
know the principles. So
that's
they
right.
cannot agree enough to change governments. We
No.
have to stay with worked up until now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and really, if you apply yourself to go prove what I'm talking about, just go prove yourself. Just go prove what Brandon's talking about right here. Go read some of these works by John Locke, Miss Rand, Thomas Sowell, and things of that nature, and you're going to come away impressed. Rene Descartes, even Francis Bacon, and then apply it to your Bible. And remember that they're writing with this moral principle in mind. Okay, and that's why Western, for God knows how long before, we don't have to go into, the mud flood and things of that nature, wiping out all technology. What we can do is from the 1600s forward, the Enlightenment period forward, we could say that man has greatly increased the ease of living of all men, and raised every single man's have a higher standard of living than most people do in the rest of the world. And it's by choice, by drugs or other things. But most impoverished people, except for maybe less than 0.05% of the population, are claiming abject poverty while owning a vehicle, having 4 or 5 big screens in their house, multiple cell phones within the household, and eating 3 meals a day. That's not poverty, folks. So the moral relativist will tell you, well, it's relative to the nation. That's bull crap. Okay. Abject poverty is to not have food in your mouth every day and not have a house over your head. Okay. And many people do choose that route because they want to. They'd rather do drugs, stand in the streets, and do fentanyl all day. You can't help those people. They can only help themselves. So let's speak on the last point. So with individualism in mind, and the fact that we created a government of men, by men, and for men, right, to protect the individual rights, we created what was called the separation of powers doctrine. Your judicial, your executive, and your legislative branch, and each one was subordinate to the one Constitution. Okay,
In
so
theory.
what? Well, that's right. And it worked for a good little while, up until about 1920 something. It was going pretty good. And directly following Woodrow Wilson's administrative state, it went downhill. And FDR's New Deal really sealed that. But nonetheless, and then Lyndon Baines Johnson. But they've been, since the onset, going after individualism. So what we have in place in objective reality is rules and methodologies which every man, woman, and child can follow to ascertain the truth. Okay, that's what rules are for. That's what they're for. So we have rules and methods of procedure are instituted in the individualist society to methodically test hypotheses, supposed statements of truth, and is based on scientific methods rather than men. And I'll state why, because men cannot be objective. There's always some type of bias within everybody, and that includes me. Okay. Methodology. If you remember, one of the first episodes we did with Alphonse was perfecting the methodology.
And what science used to do.
That's right. That's right. That's what science used to do. Now we have scientific consensus.
Religion.
However, methods can be objective, right? So I'll close today with this. If you use logic and reason, okay, against these collectivists, these judicial activists, and these lying, truth twisting attorneys that we are all facing, it isn't that hard to undo their web of lies. I wish I had the knowledge I do now a year ago, because I would have wrote my complaints just a slight bit differently, replied a little bit differently, but didn't know what I was quite up against. But that's the way knowledge works, folks. That's the way it works. My daughter's complaint appeal is going to be very simple. We have a judge skipping entire points of contradiction. Okay, and I'll explain this. Points of contention. Sorry. Dr. John Heaton, Greg Fern initiated, a mandate for all their workers to get COVID-19 vaccinated. However, at that point, when they used coercion, blackmail, extortion, and physical compulsion, they committed a crime. There's no one on this earth that has the right to access my daughter's body, her genetic material, insert something into her body that she can never remove. Okay? So we've got to discuss that legal or lawful right. Now, legal, that's a wonderful word, because legal plunder can be legal, right? We can steal from each other legally. Can't do it lawfully.
It's a big distinction.
Right. It's a huge distinction, right? However, even in her case, there's no legal precedent, because the legal standard in the United States is subordinate to the lawful. But they've been able to circumnavigate this through legalese and talking in circles. You and I cannot allow that. There's no point in allowing them outside the four corners of the pleading, and there's no way we let judges skip over the primary injury. Okay, the primary injury happened. Okay, that's it. And you're going to find it in each one of your cases, in Saraf's case, in Jimmy Jones' case, Kurt's case. I like using his real name. In Tate's case, Alphon's case, in all these people's cases where the injury was inflicted by physical compulsion or coercion, this is a criminal act in our system. Okay? And for too long, we've allowed these people to skate by. And I hope that this study edifies each and every one of you out there. It is unfortunate, because I was going to go another hour, Gary and I, talking about our current cases. I've got a personal issue going on out there, but folks, take the time, learn the philosophy behind the philosophy, right? There's a philosophical tenet to our society, and quit getting flam by those people that say the founding fathers were devils and all this other stuff. Listen, there is no perfection in any of man, okay? And there's no perfection in any system, but there is no doubt, I promise you right now, in the history and the annals of man, the radical idea, the real revolution was in 1776 in America.
That's a fact. Well, thank you, Brandon, for taking the time. And we look forward to many, many more moving forward.
Yes, we'll be back next week, folks. I'll put the next hour in where Gary and I goes through some details, and what we plan to do is, I'll just tell everybody, we plan to take specific doctrines, specific statutes. We're going to learn how to use grammar, rhetoric, and logic. We're going to start tearing apart this legalese and get back to law.
Well, with that, go take care of your personal business, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon, buddy.